All right, this is the second portion. So we know where the Shemite territory is. We know where the Japheth territory is. Now you're breaking down the Hamite territory, the three portions, three territories.
Right. So we're actually going to start looking at the Y chromosomal haplogroup, which is a heat map that shows where the different Y chromosomes that uh, that represent the three lineages of Shem, I mean of Noah, are the Hamites, the Shemites, and the Japhethites. So when we look at this map, it'll also further overlay what we talked about into the first part of this discussion about towards the end, where Shem, Ham, and Japheth were given land, right?
Mhm.
So this is a great opportunity to match Y chromosome haplogroup maps with territory boundaries set in the times of Noah. There's common
That's,
knowledge. I'm sorry.
I said that's important because when you're talking about Hamites, Japheth, the three sons that come off of the ship of Noah. So you're talking about after the flood, just in case people don't understand. The three sons of Noah, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Their descendants are called Hamites, Shemites, and Japhites. So we're talking about where they went into the three areas. They were divided up the what they call the world, uh, their world, our world, Torah world, into three segments. So now you're saying that the three bloodlines of Japheth, Ham, and Shem, there's three different markers in the haplogroups of the bloodlines from their fathers, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So there's a
So
Y
so what
chromosome.
so what is the Japheth, just to give a marker real quick, what is the Japheth code for Japhite? So we'll get an understanding. What is the code for Hamites and what is the code for Shemites? What are we looking at?
So there's this. Let me. So just to answer, J is for Japheth, J haplogroup.
Hmm.
E1B1B is typically Hamitic,
Mhm.
and then E1B1A is generally uh, Semitic haplogroup. So it's important though that we make the distinction between the Y chromosomal haplogroups and the X chromosomal DNAs assessments that come out. X chromosome is a female chromosome. It does not have a definitive genetic marker. So that's why you get people saying I'm 80% this, 10% that, and 13% this. The Y chromosome is a definitive genetic marker. It tells you precisely where you come from, what genetic group you come from. There is no percentages about it. Right?
Mm.
So we're gonna, but it's only present in the male chromosome, the male chromosomes, because only males have Y chromosomes. So you have to be able to test the chromosome of either your father, your uncles, right? That your father's from the same father as your dad. Uh, that's how you determine which haplogroup you belong to.
And I would like to point out that we didn't make that up. That's Torah, right? Like how would we know? In the Torah we wasn't blood we wasn't studying blood at that time way back then. But the Torah was the first to define that the lineage goes through the father, correct?
Correct.
So how would the Torah know that if it's not from Yah? Because now we understand as we learn to study bloodlines why the Torah says it. So we learned after the Most High gave us the direction. Science proves that the Most High is right. So I just want to make that point that the science is proving that the Most High knows before we even scientifically was able to prove it. The Most High already told us.
Absolutely. And just to clear up one point, we may very well have been studying blood back then, but they came and destroyed everything. They took the books, the knowledge, and burned everything else down. So, but the point is that Yah, in his architecture of the universe and the world and mankind, left these markers and then told us that they were left by saying everything is patrilineal. So it is pretty solid science.
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity to match Y chromosome haplogroup maps with territory boundaries set in the times of Noah. There's a common knowledge that the Hamitic race consisted of Ethiopians and Egyptians, predominantly belong to the E1B1B and J haplogroup. Below are a set of maps and geographic distributions representing each haplogroup. So you can see that the J haplogroup is obviously dominant in North
Busted.
Africa. The farther north you go, right, the more Caucasoidal you get, right?
Yep.
Um,
That's Japheth.
that's Japheth. And then here, this is just a very strong heat map. So you have the J, the R, which is both J and R's are well,
Just
so they basically, J is Hamitic and Japhethian. R is definitively um, uh, Japhethian. E1B1B is Hamitic, and E1B1A is definitively um,
Shemitic.
Shemitic. Yeah. So what you see is that there's a lot of mixture between the Hamitic races, and they stand as kind of like the in between the Japhethians and the Shemites, because you see this overlap of E1B1B molding into the other E haplogroups, and then the J's molding into the J's of the Japhethians and the R's. There are no J Shemites. Don't exist. So this map shows the dominant haplogroups throughout Africa, Middle East, and Europe. So in that area, this is Sahel right here. This is where the Rafa, Tana, the Rafa goes, right? And this is where the river Tana, where the mouth of it is. So we're now marking this to what was defined as Shemite territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then within that, you have some small subgroups that existed that don't follow the E1B1A protocol, but it was prophesied that the descendants of Ham would live in the tents of both Japheth and of Shem. So, in this map, it's basically telling you that, hey, look, all this northern stuff, this is all Hamitic, and then if you saw this distribution, you see that there is a strong distribution of J on that top or northern, where you get the Arabs, the mixed race Arabs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which Arab basically means mixed, so they're mixed with Hamites and Japhethians.
And I just like to say that you start off saying these are facts. These are not theories. This is facts.
Yeah, this is not this. I didn't put this together. This is scientific fact. This is from tests, DNA studies, running the analysis, all that. And then here, this is where you have your strong Japhethian, Hamitic mixtures, and then here it's purely Japhethian in the R haplogroups. So this right here is showing you that the land of Shem is occupied exactly as it should be, right? It's occupied by Shemites. And this land is occupied by Japhethians and Hamites. And all of this is exactly as it was articulated in the book of Jubilees, where it talks about the division of the land. It is actually matched up. And this genetic analysis was done in 2012. Please note these maps show Semitic races dominate the area referred to as the Mountain of Fire, the Middle East, and have a strong presence along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It's also important to note that the E1B1A Y chromosome haplogroup that represents the Semitic race is the dominant race south of Sahel within the territory previously discussed as a lot for Shem.
Awesome.
Any questions on that part?
No, I have none.
I think that's a good breakdown when you're talking about the racial, if you will, or the bloodline. We call it race these days, but when you're talking about the Davidic the division of our I guess our people. So people get really confused when we talk about bloodline. And I think that the Japheth bloodline, or the bloodline that really wants to take the covenant, or Shem's blessings, they know this information. I would think they would have this information still somewhere in their conquered documents as the Romans and whatnot, because they are the descendants of the nation that benefited from our cursed state, right? From our segregation, our division, our falling
That's a
away.
good point.
They would know this information ahead of the game. While we were in slavery, being whipped and struggled and going through all this oppression and abuse, they reading this stuff and defending and just saying, we want to throw this book of Jubilees out. We want to throw this out because this is too much information. So they decided what books they wanted to teach, what books they wanted to mix, what books they wanted to give us to throw us off, because they knew they couldn't erase the facts of the Most High. They knew they couldn't get rid of the promises of the Most High, right? But what they could do is they could throw us off for as long as they could, as long, you know. So I think that us starting to get these books and understanding their values and usages, because these are not the people get afraid of the book of Jubilees as Christians. Of course, we are taught, people are taught, we're not Christians, but the Christians are taught, and we're mostly raised in these Africa and these territories by Christian families and Christian churches, to not look at these other books, like literally stay away from them. Like that is what they're telling us. But once you come into the Torah knowledge, we're able to be proper judges with the knowledge of the Torah and the knowledge of the Most High as central of definitive of defining these books ourselves. We don't need to let the Romans define what books we read or what's scripture and what's not. Why would we let the Romans and their races define what we should read and what we should believe and know? Of course, they're not going to give it to us correctly, right? So I appreciate the fact that you're pointing out that you got a lot of information from the Jubilees, and you studied that, and this is breaking down and connecting with the Torah and bringing it all together, that they do jail and they belong together.
So let me bring out one more reference point. Book of Enoch. And Enoch was discussed in the book of Genesis and his relevance. But he wrote a whole book that basically is science for the real world. And in chapter 77, he talks about the divisions of the earth. And he said they call the first quarter eastern because it is the first. And they call the second south because there the Most High descends. And there especially the one who is blessed forever descends. What does that mean?
The first quarter eastern because it is the first, and they call the second south because there the Most High descends. So he's saying that they're saying that the Most High descends in the south, and there especially the one who is blessed forever descendants. That's very clear that the south is where the Most High descends, and where there especially the one who is blessed forever descendants. You got your cursor over it. I can't read that word.
Descends. You said it right.
Oh, forever
so
descends.
basically, yeah. So we the only place in the Torah that we know that Yah descended was to the temple, and
what they call the third room, the upper room, the third room. I mean,
what do you mean?
So you had the breakdown of the temple, right? So you had your outer courts of the temple, where you had your fire pit, basically your grill. At a place where you wash your hands before you go in the temple, and you wash basically to cleanse yourself. You put on your robe, you put on your things, then you go into the first area you walk up the steps, you go into the first corridor of the temple. That is where you had your priests. That is where you had your brethren of the temple, the Levitical priest and whatnot. And then you had a second area that you go in, right? And that second area is where the food was, and the gold and all of the dishes and the things that was used for the Israelite priest and the people. And then you had the third area that you had the thick curtains and the thick materials to go between. Once you went into that third area, that's the holiest of holies. That is where the ark was, and that is where the Most High would descend to give His word, and would talk to the priests, the Levitical priesthood, to teach Yisrael and give them word on what to do. So when they get word from the Most High in the Most High's place, He would descend down into that room, and it had to be, of course, clean. And the person would have to, I think, would have to have a rope around them in case something wasn't right. They'd had to pull them back out, drag them out if they died in the presence of Yah.
Absolutely. So we know that the temple could not have been in the northern hemisphere, and we know that the nation of Israel, present day, is in the northern hemisphere. So, if the Lord descended into the temple, then He had to be in the southern hemisphere. No other place was clean enough for Him to descend. So, I mean, I don't know what further we can say to indicate that biblical Israel is south of the hemisphere on the continent of Africa, south of the equator on the continent of Africa.
So my thing is, you used the daggone it, not the Torah, not the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, our Hebrew Bible, but you use the book of Jubilees, and then you just use the book of Enoch. So basically, a lot of this, what you have you have more key locations right here on the left, these keys. We're going to talk about that next. I'm going to ask questions on that. But what you're using as reference is the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees. I want to know what Rodell thinks about your references, and if those references correlate with which is what we study only, is Genesis through Malachi, or through Second Chronicles. But can we get this information from Genesis through Malachi or Genesis through Second Chronicles? Can we get that information without using those two other books, or not? Can we come to these conclusions?
You asking me?
Well, I'm asking both. I'm asking Chris, and I'm asking then I'm asking you. I think I'm mostly wanting you to respond on what I'm asking, if that's something that you're wanting to know, or how do you feel about those two other books?
I'm a little confused on the question, and I was trying to hold on to a question I had. So I was
Okay.
that might be where the confusion
I can
is.
hold on
But
my
go
question.
ahead.
Go ahead. I can hold my question. You go ahead with
No,
yours.
no. I mean, it's fine. Well, really, I didn't want to interrupt, but what I was trying to, you just started talking about something I was interested in. I was going to see if you can give me or save me some time
Yeah.
in locating where, because you were just talking about the temple. I want to know where the temple is in South Africa if it's not in modern day Israel. So I'm trying to figure out where I read that David purchased land and started to build a temple, or Solomon built the temple. I'm not sure, but that temple, I was wondering where I could get information on why that is considered to be the temple.
So the temple that Solomon built was destroyed, and that's articulated in the book of Ezekiel, the destruction of that temple. There was no second temple that was built. It actually was, Nehemiah is really talking about, Kinza, I think you had the best articulation of this.
Yeah, I kind of broke it
King
down to him
Herod.
yesterday. Yeah, I kind of broke it down to him yesterday a little bit, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to break it down again. That's a whole nother discussion, but that's King Herod's temple, correct? That was
Yes,
built in
sir.
Nehemiah.
And
Yeah.
he wasn't our king, but that's their king, Herod, that
Yeah,
guy.
but let's not go deep into that. But so the second temple, the everlasting temple that is to be built, is described in the book of Ezekiel towards the end. I think it starts in around chapter 48, 46. And that temple is meant to be in the land of Judah. And I've been to the actual site for the temple, and where it's supposed to be built. And it's a little bit of a sensitive area, so I don't really talk much about it right now.
Right. It's so it's sort of in that area over here in the southern part. So
What's happening? I'm sorry. I'm confused.
the question that you ask, he's showing you like on the map where we're talking about. We're talking about a general area. We're not going to show you a pinpoint area. We don't want to pinpoint say right here. You know what I'm saying? Because this is
okay. I see.
because you got a bunch of people that's going to watch this video that's going to think,
I
oh, they
follow.
think it's there.
I follow.
We show up and start doing something, then they, you know what I'm saying?
I follow. Yes.
What we find out is that a lot of Christians and a lot of other groups hate Hebrew Israelites who are who are following the Most High Yehovah, right? And when we
I had a question in my head that I felt was ignorant, so I didn't want to ask it. But is there a lot of white people in this area? Because we talking about it seemed like South Africa, and I was just told it's a lot of white people in South Africa.
7% of the population is white. 7%.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah, there's not a lot of white people. Now, white people control the Euro economy here, but that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. But you kind of see what they're trying to do, right? They wasn't there before, but they feel that that area is important for them to hold down. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And to control. There's a lot that we can say from my standpoint and from the studies. It's almost as if you got to take a trip yourself, and then we go there and talk about some things, or be offline and really show some things. But to answer that question, yeah, there's a general definite answer, but it's not something that we want to, make just something that's standard, because the moment we do, it's going to be a whole bunch of newfound, all of a sudden, information against that teaching just going to come out the blue. And that's what has always been happening, is this diversion sideline. As we continue to bring this information out into the public, there's this whole diversion group of people that look like you, talk like us, that try to, like, all of a sudden now biblical Israel we've been talking between Israel and Africa and Saudi Arabia and all this, and now we're talking Southern Africa and returning and understanding and teaching this. Now they're saying, no, it's America now. And now they're trying to have this same breakdown, talking about the places are in the Americas. So if you want to follow that information and go into those type of things, all it is opposition being taught to lead you out as we find this information and start to rediscover. But they will never go back into what he's showing you about the hailstorms, what was that, meteorites. There's so much information in land from the old maps that match up to the biblical territories and names in the southern part of Africa, even to the point to where you can actually triangulate. You could triangulate different cities and areas from the Hebrew Bible to the southern part of Africa, and you can't do that with any other area or any other area in the world. You can't do it. Just to talk about, I visited Tanzania, and I was and my thing was understanding Mount. What is the tallest freestanding mountain? There's a difference from a mountain that sits up against the land and a freestanding mountain. Okay, if you look up Kilimanjaro, and what a freestanding mountain means, you can walk all the way around the whole entire mountain. It just jets straight out the ground from nowhere. It's just a freestanding boom mountain, and then the whole top of it would be the tallest mountain in the world. It would be. However, the top of the mountain is cut and it's been burnt, like it's been set on fire. The whole top of the mountain is like it's been inflamed. And it's one of the only mountains that a person can walk from the base all the way to the top of the mountain that tall within a couple of days or so, which would, and then when you walk around the whole base of the mountain, it says that the nation of Yisrael, when they came out of Egypt, these are just things that I've taken note of. They encamped around the base of the mountain. All right. So they had their camp all the way around. The towns around the base of Kilimanjaro is called the town of Moshe. There's a town right at the base of the mountain of Kilimanjaro called the town of Moshe. Beautiful town. Why would it have a name? Still there. So it's a lot of information that you can put together and say, these things have always been there. We just haven't, as Black people, right? It's hard for us to study and put our mind on our history because it's always about their history. So understanding our story and separating our story from their history is what we're coming into the mindset of doing. We have our story and they have history or their story that they want to teach us or make us believe. But go ahead and ask any of your questions that you want to ask while we got you, Rodell, because I know you was I'll probably get off the subject a little bit.
No, that was it. I was asking for information that I could go back and study on my own, where I could, potentially be led to understand for myself that that where the temple is, and why that land is, the land that you claim that it is.
Right. It was some earlier I wanted to talk about. And right, we'll give you some study material. That's on the Y'all Life Nations page. That's what the Chief Chris is telling you. Once the Y'all Life Nation, the information that we have is kind of proprietary information and studied information. Not that we don't give it to people or let people, that we trust with it. So you can get it, and it is going to be available to you. So just to answer that real quick, the question that I wanted to talk about was, it's kind of weird that the Ashkenazi Jewish people, knowing that they're the fake people, but want to fool us to make us believe they are the real Jews or the Hebrews or tribe of Judah or whatnot. But they go by the ancestry of the female. They say the ancestry lineage against the Torah. Now, these Jewish people, the Ashkenazi Jews, they literally are caught. They teach against the Torah. They literally teach that ancestry is through the lineage of the female chromosome, the mother. Why do they have to do that? Because if you don't, and you go through the lineage of the father, it will prove them as Japhites. They're from the lineage of Japhite through their historical bloodline. So the reason why they do it through the mother is because they can pull multiple different mixtured bloodlines, and they can say, see, here's some right here. We're from this. It's a way, because women show multiple bloodline groups, but the man's genes don't. So I wanted to make sure that you understood the reason why when you hear that teaching that the lineage can also go through the mother bloodline, it has to be made known as a deception so that they can throw you off from the direct surety of the lineage through the father's bloodline, which is what Torah teaches. So don't fall for this the Ashkenazi Jews trick. Don't fall for that.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to put that in there. I missed that point when we were talking at that point when we were talking blood haplogroups and bloodlines through the father's lineage in the Torah. But Chris, you there? I think you probably ran to the restroom while we were talking. Probably had to go. Yeah. So go ahead, bro. Where you were left off at, unless you're done.
I think we pretty much closed the book. I mean, anything more would be overkill.
Right. Okay. Well, let me stop.
We've established that
Yeah.
we established that biblical Israel is south of Egypt, so it can't be the nation of Israel, present day. We've established that Moses crossed over the Red Sea to the west, then back up at the mountain that he initially heard from Yah, which was where he had married his Ethiopian wife and previously fought for the kingdom of Cush. We've established that Shemite territory was set aside in the book of Jubilee, and those are all just the extra books that I used were just to further support the articulations that were made from Torah, because Torah gave us the direction. Torah said it's to the south. Torah
Right.
gave us all the key indicators of where it is. So I think we pretty much covered anything. Is there any more questions? Is really the issue.
I remember Rodell's was like, I'm gonna have a lot of questions, but I like the fact that it was sort of straight Torah, straight scripture from the well, not straight Torah, I'm sorry, but backing the Torah. And it was straight evidence, and it's really clear, and it's hard to argue or make an argument against clarity that's being explained.
And then and then most of the questions that I have, they're like not they're not probably things that you've studied. So I'm gonna have to go study on my own. That's where, that's why I think I'm limited on the question. And then,
Well,
also you didn't give me the information I was looking for on the question that I asked. So, I didn't want to, continue with that line of questioning and seem like
what
I'm
question didn't I
opposing
answer?
what you're saying.
What question didn't I
So
answer?
what I was asking is if you had information like that I could go back and, study, like materials, something that I could even use to validate what you're saying, that I could read for myself, if you could provide that for me. So, like, for example, where you got the information, like that would be what I would be looking for. And then you just didn't give it to me. It's okay though.
I'm confused as to what you're looking for. I mean, if you, I mean, most of the stuff I quoted was scripture, and
I think
then
I can, well, just remember that thought, Chris. I think what he's probably saying is old maps. So one of the things that I think will help is if we have give some old maps and we can bloom in onto some of the names in the southern areas, and start to go through, like I was saying, triangulating some. I remember we did that in the past somewhere, but that's a longer time. We ain't gonna do that today, and I'm sure you would want to do that, Rodell, at some point on your own.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, yeah.
right. But I think that would help you if you look at some landmass names of some old maps and start to say, oh, hey, this is right here mentioned in this scripture. This is mentioned here. This is mentioned here. And then you try to find it in that map. And then once you start to see land masses and names that were named, the farther back you go, the more names there are mentioned that match up. Right, Chris?
Mhm.
well, I think the issue is you gotta everything has to start with Torah,
Mhm.
right? And if everything I gave you was based on Torah or some book directly mentioned in Torah or correlated to Torah. So, I mean, I can go back and I can, pull up a whole bunch
No,
of
no.
scholars.
Most
Doesn't
of
mean that
most
they're
of
right.
most of what I retained that I felt like was correct without having to study to find out if it's correct or not. Most of that was pointing to the direction of the South, and so I could follow that. I could just without studying and going into, because I'm ignorant to the fact of most of what you're saying, and
Right.
so I'm not just going to accept it as, oh, I heard it and it's true. You know what I mean? That's not how I
No,
roll.
no, right.
Yeah.
Right. So what's going to happen is Kenzai is going to give you this video,
Mhm.
And then you go through the video, and anything I said, you do your own research to fact check or to determine the validity or veracity of what I said, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I can't give you, I mean, I wouldn't dare give you a research paper from some white scientist who tells me this,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Because I didn't
yeah.
get it from a white scientist telling me this. This is divine God guiding me into these understandings. Now it's up to you to vet and fact check and see if these things actually make sense, right?
Yeah,
So you're gonna
yeah,
have to go back and
exactly.
look at the video
And
and do that.
to further strengthen your fact check, do a fact check on what you're being told based on what the scriptures we've been giving you and see who is more thorough. So if not what we've said, and if what they say is true, then fact check them first and say, is it over here? Is all these landmass, is this area? And then start to create the division and try to create the chart and try to create everything that recreate everything that we're breaking down and telling you 30 years and all these things. Try to recreate this whole breakdown that we just created for you and explain to you mountains, all these territories, all these lands, all the divisions from the book. Try to create that using that little piece of land.
No, I got it. Yeah, I got it.
You get what I'm
That
saying?
make a lot of
Because
sense too.
right,
Yeah.
because we're giving you a bunch of facts of a large territory and a large nation and three bloodlines from Noah, and we could talk
Mhm.
about where the ark landed. That's another point that he didn't break down, but that like it's a lot of information that we got that back up what we're saying from the
I
ark
did think
of
of
Noah.
that. Hmm.
Right, so we could talk about where the ark of Noah landed, and we can show you proof of those things also in Africa.
Hmm.
So and how they try to throw that off. If are you want to go preparing to go there, Chris?
For the
For
Ark for Noah's Ark?
yeah, Noah's Ark situation.
Sure.
And again, then go back and look at the information that they try to say where it is and what happened, versus
Hmm.
what we've read through these books, because
Hmm.
these books is giving us facts, and they
So
yeah. But go ahead.
yeah, go on. No. So I found a couple of articles. So if you can trace where Noah's Ark was, you can really get a even a pre-Abraham understanding of even where everything was, where Egypt was. So if we go to uh, hold on, let me find the verse. I have it in my notes, but I don't remember verses off the top of my head.
Yeah, we get time. Which were you looking for? You're looking for something on the back end.
Yeah, when they talk about they traveled to the east where they built the first great city. Genesis 11:2.
You gonna pull it up?
Yeah. Yes, I am. Genesis 11.
You can scroll down. It's two right here. As people
Yeah.
move.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Sinar and settled there. So so the question becomes, where is Sinar? And these
And
are
eastward.
all
It gives you a direction that they moved, right? It said they moved eastward.
eastward. Yeah.
It says it right there. The people move eastward. People just ignore words. They just ignore stuff. But it's telling you which direction they went, they moved to. So I just want to point out, it's telling you a direction.
So Sinar is a city on the Blue Nile in Sudan. And here it is on the map, right? It's on the Blue Nile in Sudan.
Hmm.
And it's spelled differently, but there's
Yeah.
different spellings of Sinar based upon what language you're speaking. Even if I go to, they're made up Shinar. Shinar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sennar in the Septuagint, Sennaar, right?
Same scenario, right?
Yeah. So,
Or not the
oh,
same, but the spelling is
well, I
talking about
mean,
the same
the
place.
spelling of Sennar is the same. There's actually a city in the Blue Nile, on the Blue Nile in Sudan, which is Sennar. So they moved eastward, right? And that's where Nimrod built the first great city. That's where Tower of Babel was built. But if Noah's, so that means Noah's Ark had to land west of Sennar if they went eastward, correct?
That's what I'm. Are you understanding that, Rodell?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So if I went to Cameroon, I don't know how many years ago now. It was when the war started, the Civil War started. I went to go kind of understand what was happening because there's a lot of E1B1A contingency there. And one of the things that I learned while I was there is that there is a lot of folklore, stories, history that says that Noah's Ark landed on Mount Cameroon. And if you look at the reality of Mount Cameroon, you begin to understand that it has the greatest amount of biodiversity on the planet. Every species of animal at one point was present in uh
Can you use your mouse to point to where Mount Cameroon is with that picture? I'm looking at your
so Cameroon is in this area.
of Africa, and
Yeah.
you're saying that it's the most diverse
Has the
uh
greatest amount of biodiversity. Animals, plants, birds, all those species.
species on the
It is
planet.
considered, it in Cameroon, it has every tropical, I mean, every what's it called? Every temperament, I guess, in the in the
Season,
different
if you
zones.
will.
Yeah, every
Climate.
season. Well, not every season, but every it has tropics, it has dry, it has grasslands, it has all of it. So
Okay.
and every species was existing in Cameroon. So it
Every
actually,
every ecosystem and environment. I got you.
yes, there you go.
Yeah.
So it supports the fact that Mount Cameroon is where Noah's Ark landed and everything came off the ark. Not to mention the fact that local history says so. and then so and then if you look at further history, you begin to realize that Assyria and the capital of Assyria is in Niger. It's at Gadez, which is actually where the U.S. has a military base, uh, is in this West Africa point. So the land of Ur, the Chaldeans, is actually in Cameroon, right around Mount Cameroon, which is where everybody settled, which is in the book of Jubilee. And this is where populations kind of expanded and dispersed from. So Mount Cameroon is where Noah's Ark landed. People moved towards the east, Shinar, and then they created the great city, the Tower of Babel, Coptic Cairo. It basically they tell you that Egypt was pretty much the capital of Babylon after it fell and Babylon rose to prominence. So then if you even go further into history, when you say that the two tribes were commuted, one was taken into Assyria, right? The northern kingdom was taken into Assyria, and Assyria is that West Central Africa place. Then it makes sense that we were taken by ships off of the coast of West Africa, right? And then the southern kingdom was taken into Babylon and released after 7 years, which makes sense that there's still a large E1B1A population in southern hemisphere because after 70 years they just migrated back and were scattered across the land of biblical Israel. So I mean there's a lot of layers to this. There's a lot more information. Um, in fact, there's a guy, I think Truth Unveiled 777 is the name of his YouTube channel. And he actually pulls up a bunch of maps that support Babylon and Assyria and a lot of what I'm saying. And he actually shows those old maps. So you can actually look at that and I can share that in a group, or I can actually probably just put it on here now. And then you
What do
can
you know
take that.
about the what do you know about the those people that are claiming to be the Israelites, the Bantu, that live in
Oh,
this area that you're talking about?
Bantu are Israelites. Bantu is just a language grouping.
Oh, okay.
And what you have is that throughout all of Southern Africa, and throughout all Africa, everybody's kind of divided now into language groups. So the Bantu languages are predominantly Israelites, and the way that you know when you're here is you ask them and say, are you Musoni or are you Mushabi? So Musoni means circumcised, and Mushabi means those who are seeking. So you might have someone who is Bantu, but they're not Mushoni or Musabi. And that means that they're not Israelite, right? But if they are Musoni and Mushabi, they know who they are. And it cuts across every language group, whether it's Zulu, Venda, just about everything you think of as ethnicity is really a language group. And then within those language groups, you have tribes. And those tribes and clans, you have to specifically determine whether or not they're Musoni or Mushabi. And that'll tell you whether or not they're Israelite. And they know who they are, right? They know. And there's large contingencies, there's large swashes of them throughout Southern Africa. And those are mainly Bantu speaking people. But Bantu is not a genetic group.
Okay. That's good to know. Because a lot of them seem like Hamites. They seem like they have a different spirit. But some do
Mm-hmm.
seem like they are Negroes or Shemites or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be, you know. And so that's good. That's good to know. You enlightened me on that one.
Well, I mean, be right on though, but the spirit you can tell, right? Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right on. When you are interacting, you can tell the
Mm-hmm.
spirit of them and you can determine whether or not they are for the Muslim Mushabi. And a lot of times, if when I'm dealing with our priests that we have here, they can like off the bat they know who's Mushoni, who's Mushabi, and who's not just by first interaction. It's like
So I thought when you were saying Musoni or Mushabi or whatever that was, I thought you were saying circumcised. So that's not
well
what you're saying when you say that?
well Musoni means circumcised, but so if you practice circumcision, that's one declaration that you are Israelite. But then
Oh,
you
okay.
also have to be Mushabi, which is seeking the Most High.
Okay. So that's not uncircumcised. That's seeking.
No, it's
Okay.
circumcised and seeking. You're not seeking if you're not circumcised.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But I really love this conversation. It's right up my alley. How did you end up getting this chart of breaking down on the left biblical Israel in Africa? How did you get these groups, and how did you break this down from the orange to the brown to the red to the blue to the green to the black? How did you break that down and get like that?
So it was based upon geographical references in Torah, aligned with different maps, and then superimposed on some of the major tribal groups that exist and their predominant characteristics. So in the purple right here, all of this, including the red, uh, is biblical Judah. Is the territory of Judah. Now, as you know, within the territory of Judah, there was other tribes, basically the Benjamites and the Simeonites. So Simeon and Benjamin were within the territory of Judah. So in encompassing that, so here you have the Judahites who mainly make up what I believe to be the Kosa people, Kosa with the cliques. And then you have the Simeonites, which I believe are the Zulus, the Moshoni Musabis of the Zulu tribes in Lesotho. And then the Benjamites in the red here. And then once you start crossing over into where this black is, that is the tribal territory of Ephraim, which is Zimbabwe. And then this part is the Shiloh territory, which is the first place that the Most High landed. And then you have your Zambezi River here, which is the crossover. So when you cross over the Zambezi, you get into the territory that was conquered by Moses, right? Which is Zambia, parts of Tanzania, parts of Kenya. And
So
then,
if I was to visit these places and then I bump into somebody and they say, "Oh, we've been here for 5,000 years. You know, this is our people land for 5,000 years." So am I supposed to just say that those would be Israelites? Because it seemed like to me these people are Hamites. A lot of these nations you're saying. So in my head, I don't know. I'm ignorant to what they are anyway. You know what I mean? I don't know. But it seemed like to me these are Hamite people, not Semitic
yeah, I
people.
mean, yeah, you have to come and experience, because I can tell you with strong definitive input that there are a lot of Israelites here. It's the dominant population. Once you cross the Zambezi, you are in Israelite territory, and you know the Hamites are the minority, but they're the ones that are in power. So when you look at TV, you're probably seeing Hamites, but when
And
you're on the street,
most of the Israelites don't know they're Israelites, but you'll be able to know because you're there with open eyes. You're there with open eyes. But the Israelites, you'll see suffering. You'll see that they're being oppressed. It'll start to stand out. Start to see what is happening to our people. They're at the bottom in every society, in every situation, even in their own land. They're at the bottom, and they don't know who they are. So they won't come up to you and be like, "I'm Israelites." They ain't gonna tell you that. They're gonna be anything but.
but they will tell you I'm Musoni or Mushabi.
But they will know they tried.
And that in and of itself, well, no, they do actually. That in and of itself says that you're Israelite without using the word Israelite, right? I'm Musoni, I'm Mushabi. If they answer yes to that, then they're telling you they're Israelites. And a good portion of them, I mean, there's a lot that don't know, right? But a good portion of them, especially in Zimbabwe and Southern Africa, my experience, know exactly where they're from. For example, when I was in Chirikobo in Zimbabwe, you know, a guy comes out of the bush from praying. He was a limba. He was a priest. He was a Levite, and he basically said he was embedded in the tribe. His family was embedded in the tribe of Naphtali. Now, what's one consistent part is that their 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 uh, their line of history only goes back 300 or 400 years. They know who they are, but they don't know their path for the last 300 to 400 years. I mean, after the last 300 to 400 years. So if someone tells you, my people have been here for the last 5,000 years, they're not Israelite. They tell my people have been here for the last, if they know where their people were definitively, and if their people have been there for the last 15 years, they're not Israelite. What you find is that Israelites can't go past 400, 500 years. They can tell you who they are, but they can't tell you how they got to where they are or any of that other stuff. But they know their customs, their history. They know they practice circumcision. They know they seek the Most High, but they can't tell you the particulars how they ended up where they are that particular day. They'll tell you a story, but you hear that story, you know it's a narrative that they've been fed in terms of their progression. The
It
Limba
seems
will
to
tell you.
me, it
I'm
seems to
sorry.
me like a lot. It seems to me like a lot of nations. So you know, the heathen nations, other nations, however you want to call these nations. It seems that they are claiming to be Israelites. A lot of them. I mean, you know, even Caucasian nations like claiming to be Israelite nations. You know, and I don't know when this all started, but you know, it's interesting what you're saying here. It's very enlightening.
Yeah, I mean these Caucasians, they know they're not Israelites. Even the Jews know they're not Israelites.
Well, I
So
think we got some Hamite nations and people that are claiming to be Israelites too. And
like who?
so I don't know specifically, but
Yeah.
I've bumped into a lot of African people that, are claiming to be Israelites, not even like claiming they're, like these other brothers, like they Bantu or something. They claiming, straight up that we are Israel, you know. I think a couple people from Ghana, that I could just think of off top, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean Ghanaians
It's
are
strange to
Caucasoidal.
me, huh?
Ghanaians are darn near Japhethians. They're Caucasoidal.
Hmm.
There's a small contingency, a very small contingency of Israelites in Ghana, but
Yeah.
their whole job, just as the Europeans, is to throw us off. They'll claim it just so that we can't.
Hey, if you could do me a favor, because I know y'all about to get off or whatever, man, if you ever studying or whatever, there's a scripture. I don't know. I had to find it. I find the scripture and maybe text it to you. But if you ever studying and can find, it says David bought some land, and I seen that, and I remembered the name of that those people. It started with an A, but I was gonna look it up to see, if that name had ever been changed to something else or whatever. But I was going to try to find the name, all the details of the name first, and then go seek out where that is, and
Second Samuel
see if that
24,
matched up.
18 through 25.
You said that's in Second Samuel.
Second Samuel chapter 24. Let's see. 18 through 25. On that day, Gad went to David and said to him, go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of the Aruna, the Jebusite. So David went up as the Lord commanded through Gad. When Aruna looked and saw the king and his officials coming towards him, he went out and bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. Aruna said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? To buy your threshing floor, David said, so I can build an altar to the Lord, that the plagues of the people may be stopped. Aruna said to David, let my king, the Lord, take whatever he wishes and offer it up. Here are oxen for the burnt offering, and here are threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. Your Majesty Aruna gives all this to the king. Aruna also said to him, may the Lord God accept you. But the king replied to Aruna, no, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekel of silver for them. But David built an altar to the Lord there and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. And the Lord answered his prayer on behalf of the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think so. And so I was just trying to see, take that name and then look it up and see where it was at. But I was gonna do some detailed research on the name first to make sure it wasn't just changed. I was wondering if y'all had did anything like that too. But
What started at 16? So Yahuwah sent the plague on Israel from that morning until the end of the time designated. 70,000 of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. So we're talking about Dan to Beersheba, Jerusalem, and your threshing floor of Arua, the Jebusite.
So if you did the Hebrew letter definition of Aruna, it would be Aleph Resh Vav Nun He, and Aleph is leader, ox, strength. Resh is the head, chief, indicating prominence or authority. Vav is it's a connector. or a hook or a peg, which can symbolize connection or continuity. Num is fish with life and activity. A is breath or revelation. So I would define it as a leader, the head, the strong leader that hooks, pegs.
No, I was really just wondering if you knew when you looked up the name if there was a land mass attached to that. You could sometimes you could go to like Google Maps and type it in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'm looking at is saying from Dan to Beersheba, and 70,000 of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. Where was Dan, and where was Beersheba? That's where the land was, right?
No, it said land that started with an A.
How do they say the threshing floor? What is threshing floor then? Let's break down. What is on the, they say in threshing floor for a long time. On the threshing floor of Arua, the Jebusite. So she's a Jebusite. What is Jebusite? Threshing floor of Aruna, the Jebusite. We got to study this. That's a good scripture. What you're looking for is to try to find that land that David purchased and built an altar
And
on.
it sounds like there's several lands that you could look up, is what you sound like you was reading.
Well, this is where the land where the plague was, and then David bought something on the threshing floor of Aruna, the Jebusite. So that's where he bought something, but he bought it for a purpose, for a reason, to build an altar to the Most High to end the plague. The plague was killing thousands of people from Dan to Beersheba who died. So that's where the people were residing, where his people were residing, right? And then the land or the threshing floor, whatever they change that to mean, or whatever that situation is where he bought to build the altar.
So Bathsheba was in the territory of Simeon, which would have made it in this area. And Aruna, his property was in Jerusalem, which would have made it here. Someplace around here, which is southern Namibia.
Based on the maps and the things that we've uncovered already. So that kind of would go off of the research that we already have to answer your question. If you have a different research method, then you would have to answer it based on your research method of what you have.
Yeah, I like see all of this is intriguing because it matches up with some other stuff, and I never decided to look up the Holy Land and or even think to I've heard several times that it's either here in America, it's in South Africa, or it's where they say it is, and I've heard different things like what you're saying, where they'll match up certain things biblically and say, oh, well, this matches up and this matches up, in all three of the lands. So, it is confusing and it is intriguing that I've never decided to even look that up or study. So now I'm going to study it. But I think my approach is going to be a little different. My approach is going to be like through warfare, like wars of people coming through, and let's say the Romans, and we know where Rome is, and then you say, okay, well, Rome, first thing they did, they conquered their neighbor to the east, and then they continued east, and then 30, 40 years later, that person died, and they continued on, and I'll see the progression, and then it would end up, or it would map out, and then I go to another people and maybe do the same thing. So we would probably come to the same conclusion, but that's like maybe a different approach. That's what I'm gonna start with my studies. Plus, on top of whatever this is with this land that was purchased by David for building this altar, I think that might be a clear indicator, because I know the land is holy. I have stories in the scriptures where it say that some of these other conquering armies came in and they couldn't even like live on the land because the land was holy. And so I would imagine there would be stories about how this is the holy land, and would remain holy land over thousands of years. Even when you got false people occupying the land, it would still be visible in some kind of way. And so I'm gonna look it up myself and
No,
see.
that's a good observation, what you just said about that. That kind of goes in some of the information of what you asked earlier. But one of the things I like to point out to you also is to look at how thorough we are with all three books. Okay, try to find somebody who's done research, because what other people have to do is eliminate this, eliminate that. But all these books are triangulate, they're correlating. All right, these things are correlating in our studies. In our studies is the most using these books is very vast when we're talking about scripture, east, west, south, winds blowing this way. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that were said. Find somebody who's trying to say it somewhere else or different if you wanted to, right? And then try to make these books make sense based on what they're saying. It just doesn't, nothing else makes sense that they're saying. They have to eliminate something or try to talk about something or dog this or dog that and try to push you into a certain direction outside of these books. And that's what we're not wanting to do. We're, as Israelites, we're not wanting to go outside of books of the Torah. All right. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop
All
recording.
right, yeah, I was about to say, y'all want to end the